I am sick and tired of people believing, for some reason still, that they can scare us out of doing our jobs. That they can somehow intimidate us or silence us. If you don't realize by this point that not only is that not going to work, but that's going to make us continue to do what we're doing 10 times more aggressively than we already were, I can't help you if you haven't figured that out by now. So let me preface this with this. When I was covering Seattle City Hall for a long time in my legacy news career, there was a familiar pattern that would pop up. It's very common among leftists, but we saw it at Seattle City Hall a lot. They would do something that was even too extreme for Seattle. They would push things just a little bit too far. They would say something that angered the wrong people and that caused a type of pushback that they weren't usually used to. And what would they do every single time? Like clockwork. They would then turn around and play the victim and say they were getting threats as a way to try to take the heat off of them, to take the pressure. And the legacy media would usually capitulate to that. You would have the Seattle City Council do something extreme or a member, and that member would come out and say, I'm getting death threats now. People are emailing my office with death threats, and the media would back off a little bit. We don't want to be too hard on this person. They're getting death threats, or they claim they're getting death threats, and so we'll just back off the story. It doesn't work with us. Now, look, there's no place for threats of physical harm or violence when, in my opinion, in public discourse, and that's why we don't engage in that ourselves. And I happen to know the undivided audience very, very well. And I know that our tried and true undivided fans don't engage in that as well. Now, if we have a story that we do, as we did last week, that takes on a life of its own, that gets national attention, I am not going to take responsibility for everything said on the internet that is a result of a story that we might bring to light. Refuse to do that, because that just gives the people who we are rightfully criticizing some sort of out. And in this case, the issue is too important to give them that out. So last week on the show, we were talking about this controversy that originated on February 6th at a basketball game between Tumwater High School and Shelton High School. There, as you know, by now was a student, Frances Stout, 15 years old, a sophomore, who sat out the final basketball game of the year because she refused to play against a biological boy. And there was a biological boy on the Shelton High School team. So not only did Frances sit out the game that evening, but she then took to social media and posted her frustration that adults, teachers, staff, the school, the principal, the athletic director, coaches, no one is standing up for biological girls. And this game happened the day after President Donald Trump signed his executive order banning men from participation in girls' sports. Of course, that executive order didn't automatically mean Washington State was going to change course, but it sort of put them on notice that, hey, there might be consequences for you from a federal funding perspective if you continue to allow, as Washington State is, biological boys to compete against girls. So Frances Stout made her frustrations very well known. And before Frances's story reached us, it was circulating pretty widely among local parents and students in that district and around that district. So after a couple days after we ended up picking up the story, the Tumwater Education Association, so the teachers union, as we discussed on this show, put out a very interestingly timed post on their Facebook page where they said, "Dear trans kids, this world is better with you in it, and you are worth fighting for." And the whole post was about hate. Hate cannot drive out hate. Education is a human right. To all those who say educators are indoctrinating students, students are teaching educators to accept students for who they really are as humans. We are not indoctrinating students. We're loving. So is this whole thing basically about how, we're not going to let hateful people turn us against the trans community, so to speak. Now, I saw that post and immediately realized what it was. It was a post against Frances Stout. The timing made that very clear, and that was the opinion that I expressed on this show. That was very clearly the teachers' union taking a stand against a 15-year-old biological girl who stood up for herself. And as I said on this show, that is incredibly inappropriate. It's incredibly inappropriate. And the day this got posted, before I discussed that post on the show, I noticed that there were a ton of community members and parents in the comments of that post who also had a problem with it and who also saw it for what it was. They realized that that post was intended to be an attack on Frances Stout and on her right, her First Amendment rights to speak up for herself and to say, I'm not going to play against a biological boy. So before I got on this show the next day and said that I believe that's what it was too, there were plenty of parents who were angry in the comments and who were also tired of the constant, non-stop pushing of radical gender ideology by the Tumwater Education Association. They'd had enough. They made it very clear they had enough. So I got on the show, I talked about this post, I talked about how absurd it is that teachers, staff members who teach in the school where Frances Stout goes would talk about hate and would make it a very clear statement that they believe what she was engaged in was hate. And that's what they're doing. Make no mistake about that. And I said on the show, you know, people are eviscerating the Tumwater Education Association in the comments long before I got involved or pointed out the post. So what happened is the Tumwater Education Association, as you know, they ended up deleting that post. And I said on the show, probably because they weren't getting the response they thought they were going to get. Probably because they saw that parents were turning against them, that parents were sick and tired of what was going on. So that's sort of where we left things last week, right? So then I get sent an internal email from the president of the Tumwater Education Association. So his name is DJ Primer, and he is DJ Brimer, rather. He's a 6th grade science teacher in the Tumwater Middle School, but he is also the president of the Tumwater Education Association. So over the weekend, DJ Brimer sent out a very long email internally to union members, so teachers within the Tumwater School District. Now, I'm going to go over a little bit of this. I'll pull out some specific quotes that I want to talk about, but the gist of it is this, that me, Brandi Kruse, is causing, by covering this issue and by shedding light on this issue and the actions of the Tumwater Education in the school district, that I have directly led to threats of physical harm against him personally and against the Tumwater School District and teachers and staff by doing my job. In this email, he talks about, and he does say, that maybe the post was poorly timed given the debate over transgender athletics that's happening in the Tumwater School District. But he claims that he didn't delete the post because parents were in the comments eviscerating them, that he deleted the post for concerns about the physical safety of members of the Tumwater Education Association and the union. And he mentions me multiple times in here. Brandi Kruse is a podcaster who posted a segment to her Facebook page yesterday regarding the deleted Facebook post on our Tumwater page. I deleted the post as a safety measure to make sure no physical harm or violence comes to educators in the Tumwater School District. And he goes on to say that I'm just wrong, that the post was a response to Frances Stout. Oh, that's not what it was about at all. But again, employing a tactic I have seen used many, many times by the far left. We are under a lot of pressure. We are not getting the response that we thought we'd get. People are really mad at us. And so what we're going to do is now play the victim and hope that that takes the pressure off of us. I mean, he's saying that they ended up taking down the pages and the direct links to executive members of the Tumwater Education Association because of all the threats. I mean, this email makes it sound like threats have been pouring in over the weekend to the Tumwater Education Association and the Tumwater School District. Nicole, have you heard anything? Before I get to some aspects of this email I want to point out and tell you a little bit more about DJ Brimer and how he is an illustration of everything that we're fighting against on this show. Have you heard any reports of the Tumwater School District closing down schools for the day, Friday?
No, I have not.
I haven't seen anything out from the police department, because you would think that if you were getting threats, as he's characterized, of physical harm, that the district was inundated with threats. The natural response would be, well, we can't have kids here at the school. If this many threats are coming into the school district, well, certainly you're going to cancel school for the day, right? I haven't seen that. To the best of my knowledge, kids are going to classes today in the Tumwater School District. And that tells me that there are no threats. That there are no threats. If there are, please send them to us. Now, I've been made aware of one that I'm working to get from the Olympia Police Department. And we'll see if that is and he references it in here, which I'll talk about momentarily. But you would think if there were legitimate concerns and threats coming into the Tumwater Education Association over our coverage of something, that they would not be in school today. And that would be my expectation too, because I want kids to feel safe. If there's a threat coming into the school district, by all means, close school for the day. Haven't heard about that. Let me read a few quotes from this email that, again, DJ Breimer, the Tumwater Education Association president, sent out to his members. The community uproar from my post assumed Tumwater Education Association was backing the non-binary trans female student and not the biologically female student, even though my post mentioned absolutely nothing about the athletics program issue here in Tumwater. Yet you didn't have to. The connection was pretty clear. And even if it was just a coincidence that you're talking about hate against trans students when your school is now at the center of this giant controversy, the post itself is proof of whose side you take. There wasn't any sort of post supporting Frances in her right to speak up for what she believes in. No, of course not. But a veiled post about hate against trans students? Yeah, I don't need you to spell it out for us, nor would you. Nor would you be able to, as a Tumwater educator, a teacher in the district, post something explicitly naming Frances Stout and saying she is hateful. But your post said it all. And again, it wasn't just me that assumed that. Before we talked about it on the show, you were flooded with comments from parents who assumed that, from people in the district who assumed that, because it was crystal clear what you were trying to do. DJ Breimer goes on to say in this email, the district office has been receiving threatening emails and phone calls from the public. We have learned that these appear to be coming from individuals and groups who are following the Brandi Kruse podcasts. She has also created podcasts about the Tumwater School District. I would like to see what evidence they have that people associated with this show, that fans of this show, are emailing and threatening the school district. And we'll be reaching out to the Tumwater School District to ask for that proof. Because they're not just opining about it. He's saying, we have learned. Now, what's interesting about that is in the days after we started covering this controversy, it has taken off. I mean, millions of people have watched Frances's initial interview and clips of it on social media. Libs of TikTok picked it up over the weekend. The New York Post mentioned it in a story of theirs over the weekend. And I would think it's much more likely if there is some sort of threats or what they're considering or calling threats coming in, that maybe it's from someone across the country who saw it on Libs of TikTok, who saw it read about it in the New York Post. All of those are perfectly viable options, are they not? Yet DJ Breimer is certain, it sounds like, that there are threats that are because of me and because of this show, because we aired 2 interviews that were thoughtful, that were in-depth, that were respectful, with the biological girl and the trans athlete, shared both sides of the stories. And because we had the audacity to do that, it must be our fault that people are threatening the school district. Again, this is just a tactic to try to get the heat to die down. He goes on to say, in addition, I received a threat of physical violence that someone from Philadelphia emailed to our contact page. Now, I like to think our show is popular. I don't think we have many viewers or listeners in Philadelphia. So again, much more likely that someone saw it on Libs of TikTok or New York Post or something like that. That is the particular threat he's claiming that he contacted the Olympia Police Department about. So we should be able to request the Olympia Police Department, the content of that police report, to see what this threat really is. Something tells me probably not an actual threat. It's my experience from covering these sorts of things. So I want to talk about DJ Breimer. If he's going to put my name in his mouth, then I'm going to put his name in my mouth. And we're going to talk a little bit about how actually now he has offered himself up as the perfect example of the sort of educators who we want to purge from our public school system. So, of course, after he sends out this email, we, some other parents, are sending us nonstop stuff. We're looking into this guy. Now, if you look at his social media, you're not going to be surprised by what you find. His posts are the definition of someone who has TDS, radical gender ideology, white guilt, all wrapped up into one. I mean, it is exactly what you would expect of a very leftist educator union president. He's got pics of himself, white dudes for Harris, Stop Project 2025, endless posts about radical gender ideology, LGBTQ plus 2IA, this teacher believes Black Lives Matter, blah, blah, blah. I mean, rainbow flags galore. So I don't know that that's a particular surprise. Yes, he's anti-Trump. Yes, he's anti-Republican. But this is very clearly someone whose very identity as an educator is wrapped up inextricably into radical gender ideology. Just as an example, when he first ran for vice president of the teachers union, this is a couple years ago, he had his flyer, vote DJ Breimer, Tumwater Education Association vice president. And for whatever reason, a trans flag. So you're running to be the president of a teachers union, or the vice president at the time. And besides a picture of yourself, the one other graphic you have in there is a trans pride flag. Again, this is someone who is so blinded and obsessed and committed to this ideology that he's incapable of seeing why it's problematic, even when confronted by parents of his own students who are trying to explain to him why his approach as an educator is problematic. So after this email comes out accusing me of, oh my gosh, thanks to Brandi Kruse, everyone's getting threats here, threats there, because they want to shut me up, which I never shut up. We got an email from parents of a former student of DJ Breimer. So again, he is the president of the Education Association, but he's also a 6th grade science teacher. So this is from September 2023. The parents write to Mr. Breimer, "Good afternoon. We are transitioning back to public school after a few years in private school. We knew that switching schools would involve an adjustment as well as exposure to social topics that would be new for our children. Our child came home last week," we blacked out the child's name, "and talked about how you took roll and that you apologized in advance if you dead named anyone. I had not heard this term before and needed to look it up. What I read was the following. Dead naming is when you call a transgender person by their birth name when they have changed their name as part of their gender transition." The parent goes on to say to Mr. Breimer, additionally, she explained you have a non-binary child. I was surprised this is how my child was reintroduced to public school. Can you help me understand if this type of introduction to transgenderism is something that is mandated by the state or mandated by the school, or if this is something that is your choice to introduce to the children? Thank you so much for the insight. So that is a parent. That's not a podcaster. That's a parent in September of 2023, the very beginning of the school year, whose kid comes home and tells her, hey, Mr. Breimer started roll call by preemptively apologizing to the class if he dead named anyone. And the parent thought, well, that's weird, and wanted to know, hey, is this being mandated? Is the state requiring that you do this? Because I don't know if I'm ready for my child to have that kind of introduction, 6th grade, to transgenderism and dead naming, terms I wasn't even familiar with as a parent. Here is the response from DJ Breimer. Hello, we have students at Tumwater Middle School who are non-binary humans. I used my own child as an example to make a connection with those students who use a name other than the name assigned at birth. Using the names our students prefer to be used is a very high priority at Tumwater Middle School. Transgenderism is a topic we embrace wholeheartedly with open arms here at TMS in an effort to honor and recognize our students from all walks of life. The beginning of the school year is always a time when instructional staff are getting to know student names. The unintentional use of names assigned at birth when a student does not use that name any longer is highly offensive to that student. That is why I gave my own example of my own child, because my child represents a myriad of students who have the same experience here at our public middle school. It is my professional choice, TMS culture, and school district policy to not discriminate against our students and their families in any way. Thank you. 6th grade teacher. Obsessed, utterly obsessed, we now know because of their own child's experience, with pushing that experience on other people's kids. Inextricable from their values and their mission as an educator. And there you hear it from DJ Breimer in his own words. Now, that parent has since moved out of state. Here is the response that parent sent in September of 2023 to their child's teacher. Good morning, Mr. Breimer. Thank you for your prompt response. I would like my daughter removed from all of your classes as of today. Please feel free to call myself or my husband if you would like to discuss this further. He didn't want to discuss it further. He just said thank you and referred them to someone else with the school district for further action. So here you have a quote-unquote educator, president of the teachers union, who is obsessed, utterly obsessed, with radical gender ideology because of his own experience with his own child, and says it is his personal mission to continue to push it in his 6th grade classrooms. So much so that at least one parent pulled their child out of his class and has since left the state because teachers like DJ Breimer are all too common in Washington. So I am more than happy to use him today as an example of not only why the teachers' unions are so extreme because they're led by people like him, but an example of why our public education system is in ruin. Why enrollment is down. There's one example, parent gone, the tax money they provided gone. Enrollment is down, attendance is down, test scores are in the toilet, in the Tumwater School District included. And it is because of a growing and continuing obsession with things other than academics. And don't just take my word for it. As we mentioned on the show last week, and as we played on Sundays with subscribers yesterday, we had the transgender athlete who was on the Shelton team at the center of this whole controversy on our show, had a wonderful, productive, respectful conversation with Andy Rooks, now 18, a senior at Shelton High School. And Andy, who, biological boy, identifying as a girl since the 2nd grade, lives every day of his life as a transgendered teen in our public school system. Even Andy Rooks knows and believes that teachers like DJ Breimer and their radical gender ideology goes too far. Here's a clip.
Am I saying like it's something the school district should hide and never speak of? No, but I think there's definitely a line. Like why are we talking about it so much? The world doesn't revolve around it. And I remember yesterday watching Frances's episode, how she mentioned how in one of her classes there was a much bigger transgender flag than there was an American flag, and I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
That is something that I can agree with them that I don't believe is right. And like if you're gonna have 2 flags, at least make them equal.
Yeah.
If you really want to have 2 flags, I get having like a little poster that's like this is a safe place for everyone, but why have a giant transgender flag next to a tiny American flag? It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't want to say that they're not good teachers because they're doing what they're allowed to do. I don't know what they would do if they weren't allowed to push this garbage.
Yeah.
But it's crazy, you know, that this is even involved in when you go to math and you learn about gender or whatever. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know how to articulate just how insane this is to me.
It's an enigma, I think, for a lot of people to see you as a dad sitting next to your transgender child saying it's garbage that they're talking about these things in school.
You know, it's one of the things that I really pushed. I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of the things I tried to push with Andy from the time she was little is that you are not a trans person named Andy. You're Andy. That's it. Like this, and it's this focus in these schools that you are the sum total of these things, that those are what make you special.
Your skin color, your gender.
Yeah. And so we have special clubs and special places for you to go. And I fought anytime I heard that people doing those things with Andy. Nope. Andy is not special because of this. Andy is a person, and she's going to get an education, and this is not going to be what, what your life is about.
Well, and like, I'm no victim of anything. I'm just like everybody else. Am I a little different in some ways? But we're all different. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But to just shove those things down people's throats, and I wouldn't even agree with it if it's like other students in the class, like shoving their beliefs. Like, I don't shove the fact that I'm trans down everyone's throats around me because I don't care to. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to listen to me shove it down like you're going to use my correct pronouns and stuff. Like, I've seen arguments happen at school between students, and I'm just like, I would never act that way. But like, even in a college class I took last year, actually it was earlier this year, and it was a political science class, and we're obviously discussing politics and stuff. The teacher was so liberal that like everything I felt like we discussed was blue. And like, even when we had to discuss a cartoon and she like attached this link to this cartoon, it was just cartoons bashing Trump.
There you have it. You won't see something like that anywhere else except unDivided. So DJ Breimer and all the little teachers from Olympia and Tumwater who were in my mentions coming to his defense and shaming me for leading to threats to the school district. You can blame me. You can blame, white blonde lady, former Fox News lady, all conservative, Trump supporter. They were calling me all sorts of things. But that's a transgender student in the public school system in Washington who doesn't know why you're talking about these things so much in school, thinks it's weird. Doesn't know why you would have transgender flags in classrooms, let alone transgender flags that are bigger than the American flag. Thinks it's weird. Who says, I'm not a victim. Why do they treat me like a victim? There's so much more to me than being transgender. Yet all DJ Breimer wants to do is protect trans students like they're victims in need of protection. Does Andy look like Andy needs protection? Andy did something that most adults and politicians in our state won't do, and that's sit here and answer questions from me. I don't think Andy needs protection from anyone, certainly not DJ Breimer. So just know this, and what I'll say. Legacy media, Brandi, might have been scared away or shut down by editors or whatever it is when someone who we were critical of, rightfully so, came out and said, I'm being threatened because of this coverage. We're getting threatening phone calls, threats of physical violence, which, again, until I see it, I don't believe, because I've seen this tactic too many times. So legacy media, Brandi, might have been slowed down, shut up, whatever it is. This Brandi is not. That Nicole is not. And I promise you, and one of the things I did is take note of the names of teachers in Olympia and Tumwater who were in our comments and in our mentions defending all of this stuff, doth protest too much. I think the ones defending it the most, trying to scream like nothing to see here, are probably the ones who are perpetrating it the most. And we will expose every single one of you until you stop pushing your radical agenda on people's kids and until our schools return to what they should be, places of learning and places of academic success.